So here we are seeing that earlier the sons of Brahma, led by Marichi and others, they all approached Brahmaji and tried to make him aware about the fault of not getting attracted to his own daughter, not to become lusty. This does not befit a person of such a stature. But here we are seeing they were able to understand the determination for lusty desires is so strong that even if one is advised, it is very difficult that one will be able to give up his lusty desires. So they tried to give him good understanding, to make him aware of his position and that he should not be doing this. But in spite of that, he was not dissuaded from his desire because of his strong determination towards lusty desires. Then they understood it will not be possible like this. We should pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord who has manifested this whole material creation. It is He from whom this illusion has come. And it is He only, by His mercy, this illusion of Brahmaji, our father, can be removed. So, Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Ya Idam Svena Rochisha. Let us pray to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whose effulgence this whole cosmic manifestation has become manifested. Atmastham Vyanjana Asa. The Supreme Lord is always situated in Himself. He is Atmaram, one who is not looking for happiness outside. It is we, the living entities, who are looking for happiness outside. Supreme Lord, not like Brahma, who is attracted to something outside. The Supreme Lord is completely Atmastham, situated in Himself. May He also protect religion for all goodness. Sadharmam patum arhati. So they are actually praying to the Supreme Lord that Brahmaji may come to his senses and thus he may give protection to their father. So actually, very important point which Prabhupada makes here is that it is only by the grace of the Supreme Lord that one can be protected from the allurement of lusty material desires. It's a very important point. It is only by the grace of the Lord one can be protected from the allurement of lusty material desire. Another important point which Prabhupada makes is, let us say for a devotee, we are all practicing Krishna consciousness. Then, sometimes it may happen that there may be an accidental fall down. Here we are seeing the example of Brahma. Prabhupada is saying, the Lord will also protect His devotees from such accidental fall downs. Even if there is an accidental fall down, the Lord will still give protection to His devotees. So this is another very important point Prabhupada is saying. The Lord gives protection to the devotees who are always engaged in His transcendental loving service, and by His causeless mercy, He forgives the accidental fall of a devotee. So this is the special mercy of the Lord towards His devotees who are engaged in His service. I was reading one very beautiful, I think it is a lecture of Prabhupada, where Prabhupada, he gives one example from Bhagavad Gita. So he was lecturing on Bhagavad Gita, talking about Sthita Prajna, how to understand a person who is completely situated in transcendental position. So there Prabhupada explains in context to that verse that the one who is situated on transcendental platform, he does not rejoice if he gets some material pleasure. Suppose there is an opportunity to enjoy some material pleasure, wealth, women, all these things, let us say, a devotee gets. A devotee does not take pleasure in that. He does not become elated materially by getting any of the material sense gratification objects. And on the other hand, when a devotee is put under distressful condition, the devotee does not give up his Krishna consciousness. So he is steady both in material happiness as well as in material distress. He is still completely surrendered to the Lord. Whereas people generally, when there is a material pleasure, they become completely so-called materially elevated, materially very happy, and when there is distressful condition, they become completely lost. We have heard about one example which Prabhupada gives about there was a freedom fighter, one Dasa, there was a freedom fighter in Calcutta, and he was working for British government. So British government at that time was giving practically of a salary of lakhs of rupees to him per month. But at that time, Indian freedom movement had taken quite a lot of, people were interested, and Gandhiji had given a call that those who want Swaraj, they should all support this movement. So what was his call? His call was that give up everything British, their clothes, their jobs, we don't want. You reject all of them. Then automatically they will be forced to leave from here. So this Das, he was, supporter of Gandhiji's movement at the same time, but he was also very attached to the kind of living he was having because of that British government's whatever salary he was getting monthly. But somehow, factually, later on, he gave up his job and he joined Congress. So to maintain his family, everything, at that time, Congress started giving him 500 rupees per month. So he was not able to tolerate. Prabhupada explains that within few months he died, because he was not able to take on his head this kind of distress, and he died. So Prabhupada gave the example about how it is very difficult even for a person like such a great freedom fighter to go through such a distressful condition that factually he gave up his life. Even opposite is true. Prabhupada gave another example that even material pleasure is like that. Not only material distressful condition, even material pleasure is like that. Once there was One person was having a lot of horses in his house, and he had one servant who used to look after the horses. You see? So in English they call them as groom, one who grooms the horses, cleans them, all those things. So once it so happened that both of them purchased some lottery ticket. The master also purchased some lottery ticket and the servant also purchased some lottery ticket. So one day the master came back to the house and he was little depressed, and he said to his servant, "See, I lost that lottery ticket, I could not get, but there is a good news for you. You have won 10 lakhs rupees in the lottery." And the person who was that servant, he became so happy, so jubilant, he got a heart attack. And he died. So Prabhupada said, just like there is a distress attack, there is a pleasure attack also. This is material happiness, material distress. So devotee is neither elated in material happiness, nor he becomes completely dejected in any kind of material miseries. He is steady in both of them. So actually that is how a devotee takes the so-called material pleasures or material miseries. That is a stature of a devotee. And that is possible only when we are situated on transcendental platform. So here we are seeing Marichi and other sons. They are praying to the Supreme Lord. They have realized it that without being transcendentally situated, there is no possibility that a person can give up his material desires. They all try to persuade, plead to their father, try to give him some good sense, try to give him that understanding. But in spite of that, we are seeing Brahmaji, he was not shaken up. He did not give up the desire to enjoy his senses. He was very determined. So Prabhupada is saying here, lust for sexual intercourse is so strong that it appears herein that Brahma could not be dissuaded from his determination in spite of the appeal by his great sons like Marichi. So this method will not work. By giving some good counsel, by giving some advice, any kind of such material process does not work. So when they understood that this is not going to work, then they prayed to the Supreme Lord that it is by His mercy alone that Brahmaji can come out of this kind of illusion. So only when a person becomes situated in transcendental knowledge, in transcendence, when he becomes sthita prajna, then it is possible that he will not become attracted towards material desires. Otherwise, as we are seeing, even a person of such a stature like Brahma, that he became attracted towards such kind of lusty desires. There is a very beautiful quote by Prabhupada, which is very important for devotees, all of us, to remember this, because we are all in a situation like Brahmaji. He is in very exalted position. What are we in front of him, isn't it? So we are seeing, Prabhupada is saying that Brahmaji is actually teaching by his own example, human frailty. That is what Brahmaji wants to teach us. So if Brahmaji with such a great stature, he is not able to control, the idea is to understand how it is possible for us to control with our own endeavor, with some kind of material process. It is not possible, isn't it? So it is only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord we can overcome such kind of sensual desires. So, there is a very beautiful example. Once we had discussed this in one of our class, but it is worth repeating and it is worth remembering this example given by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada says, to stop material desires, we must take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. We must take, there is no other way. Not that we have to take, we should take. If you want to stop material desires, then you must take shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Then Prabhupada gives a very beautiful example. The waves of a river are constantly flowing and cannot be stopped. Likewise, material desires in our heart are constantly flowing. Prabhupada is comparing that. Just like waves in a river are constantly flowing and it is very difficult to stop them. Isn't it? I remember when, for the first time I went to Mayapur. So all the devotees, they were all, they wanted to take bath in river Ganges, Ganga river. So I was also pulled that I also thought that better. Actually, I had no idea much about swimming. And river Ganga is actually it is considered to be, sometimes the tides it suddenly changes. The whole flow of the river suddenly changes there. And many people have drowned there. So I remember, I just went there and I slipped from that, just at the bank of the river I slipped. And suddenly I went down, it was too deep there. And practically I thought that at that moment I was able to just understand, the mind was contemplating, I am finished now. You see, death was so near practically. I slipped and I just went down. And I just prayed to the Lord somehow. And I came to the top and immediately some devotees were there, they caught hold and they pulled me outside. So rivers, tides are like that. It's very difficult to stop them. So Prabhupada is saying here, the waves of the river are constantly flowing and cannot be stopped. But the waves of the river flow towards the sea. When the tide crosses over the river, it overwhelms the flowing of the river and the river itself becomes overflooded. The waves from the sea become more prominent than the waves of the river. So this is what Prabhupada is saying. Even though there are material desires in all of us, they're all constantly flowing like the waves of the river. But if we take shelter of Krishna, Prabhupada says Krishna is like that tide. If our desire becomes overflooded with tides of the sea, then automatically it will suppress and these tides of the sea will become more prominent. So that is what Prabhupada is saying. Similarly, how to do that? How to become absorbed by the tides of sea, or how to become overwhelmed with Krishna consciousness. If we become overwhelmed with Krishna consciousness, material desires will automatically become suppressed and they will be finished completely. So Prabhupada is saying, the devotee with intelligence plans so many things for the service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness that stagnant material desires becomes overflooded by the desires to serve Krishna. You see? Our desires, stagnant material desires, which are again and again coming out, they will become overflooded by the desires to serve Krishna. That is how we should engage ourselves in service of the Lord. With intelligence, with our mind, we should plan so many services for the Lord that automatically the mind will become, the intelligence will become overflooded and then these stagnant material desires will stop. And then further Prabhupada gives the example. This is confirmed by Yamunacharya. As confirmed by Yamunacharya, he says, since he has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, there is always a current of newer and newer desires flowing to serve Krishna. You see? So, there is always a wave or a current of newer and newer desire in the service of the Lord. So, when your heart thus becomes overflooded with more and more desires to serve Krishna, these material desires will stop. Then no more these material desires will be able to overtake these spiritual desires to serve lotus feet of Krishna. So much so that the stagnant desire of sex life becomes very insignificant, as also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishtva Nivartate. You see? So when a person actually is tasting something higher, where is the question? The mind will ever go to something lower. When we have not tasted that higher pleasure in service of the Lord, then only the mind will be dragged to such base desires. The moment the mind has tasted, we have tasted, the soul has tasted the service of the Lord, the higher taste, Param Drishtva Nivartate. Actually, this is the only solution. This is the only solution. There is no other way. Because mind, it needs some engagement, either lower or higher. When it has not got taste in higher service of the Lord, then automatically it will be pulled towards material desires, these base material desires. But the moment the mind gets a taste, higher taste, Param Drishtva, Nivartate, it will give up. Nivartate means it will give up lower engagements, lower kind of taste. So, this is what the sons of Marichi also realized. Sons of Brahma like Marichi and others, they all realized that it is not possible that with our pleading, with our advice, Brahmaji will stop. It is only by the grace of the Lord it is possible. Isn't it? Another important point which Prabhupada is making is actually, not only it is possible by the mercy of the Lord, but if somebody is engaged constantly, sincerely in the service of the Lord, there is possibility that because of our old habits, there may be possibility that sometimes there is an accidental fall down. We have to note this, very important. Accidental fall down, the Lord will forgive. But if it is a contemplated fall down, if we are thinking in another way that I have taken to Krishna consciousness, Krishna will forgive, does not matter. What I will do, I will take to all this kind of base desire, let me try to gratify my senses, and then I will chant the holy name of the Lord, I will pray to Krishna, He will forgive me. That also Prabhupada says, 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, next time, get out. Prabhupada says like that. Krishna will say, get out. Isn't it? So, accidental fall down, Krishna will definitely forgive, as Prabhupada is saying. There is one very beautiful pastime where one devotee, sannyasi devotee of Prabhupada, he fell down from his position and he got into affair with one woman, and then finally left his sannyas and he went and married that woman. And then later on with his wife, he approached Prabhupada. So his name was Hanuman Das, so one of Prabhupada's sannyasi disciple. So it was in Mexico. Prabhupada was giving a lecture. So after the class, he approached Prabhupada. He came to see spiritual master. So when most of the guests had left and only Prabhupada's disciples were there, so that time he asked Prabhupada, what did he ask? He said, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had one disciple in the renounced order, Chota Haridas, whom he rejected from his association because he became too much lusty after a woman. So he is giving the incident of Chota Haridas, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was so strict that when Chota Haridas, when he understood that he had become lusty, he had lustfully looked at a woman, glanced at a woman. So he became, so much, he was harsh that he left him from his company. And finally, Chota Haridas, not seeing the Lord, thought that this life is waste. If I cannot serve the Lord, then what is the use of keeping this life? He went and committed suicide. So he was rejected from the association because he became too much lusty after a woman. And then he is saying, I was also one of your sannyasa disciple, and I too became lusty after a woman. I was wondering if you have rejected me from your association. So he asked this question to Prabhupada. All disciples of Prabhupada, they are all sitting. And then Prabhupada looked very, very serious. And he was sitting. And there was a pause. Everybody was silent. And then Prabhupada replied. He looked at Hanuman and he replied, Lord Chaitanya, He is God Himself. He can spread this movement all over the world in 1 second without the help of anyone if He likes. But I am not God. I am simply a servant of God. I require so much assistance to help me spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. If someone renders even some small service to help me, I am eternally indebted to him. Just see the mercy of Prabhupada. You see? This is how we should see. Just see the mercy of Prabhupada. I require so much assistance to help me to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. If someone renders even some small service to help me, I am eternally indebted to him. You have rendered so much assistance to me, how could I reject you? See? So this is merciful attitude of Prabhupada. But of course, that is what we should understand. If it is an accidental fall down, Prabhupada does not reject us. But we cannot make some kind of proposal or a contract or think that on one hand I will perform devotional service and on another hand I will continue to do all kinds of sinful activity. That is not forgivable. That is not possible. One time, one devotee asked Prabhupada, it is said that the spiritual master, he does not leave the planet or he comes back till his disciple are not, till they are taken back to Godhead. Till even any of his disciples, if they are rotting in this material world, the spiritual master has to come back and he takes them. So Prabhupada said, yes, that is a truth. But do not make your spiritual master to come back. Finish off this business in this lifetime. Why do you want your spiritual master to come back? And then Prabhupada gave the example of that how for Bilva Mangala Thakur, who was at such a high stage, Prabhupada says, near to Prema. He was at a very exalted stage in his previous life. But somehow, he fell down from that position. And then, when he came back as Bilva Mangala Thakur, we see that how he became attached to a prostitute. So then Prabhupada said, the spiritual master guided him through the prostitute. Spiritual master was still there in the planet and guided him through the prostitute. So through the prostitute, the spiritual master spoke that, why are you so attached to this flesh body? Isn't it? You are so attached to this body. If the same attraction you had for Krishna, probably by now you would have got Krishna. And this struck Bilvamangala Thakur. And immediately he understood that actually this is the mercy of the Lord, and immediately he left that place from there. And from there onward he became a great devotee of the Lord. And we know that Bilvamangala Thakur was such a great devotee. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would read the writings of Bilvamangala Thakur and he would say that he was, a very exalted devotee of the Lord. So then Prabhupada pointed out, so don't make your spiritual master come back and give you advice through a prostitute. Isn't it? No doubt the spiritual master may have to come back and somehow or other take the disciple, but don't make your spiritual master to come back like this and give you advice through a prostitute and then rescue you like this. Better to finish off the business in one lifetime itself. So, this is another important point which Prabhupada is saying, that it is only when a devotee is engaged constantly in the service of the Lord, but if there is an accidental fall down, the Lord will still give him protection. It's already time, but anyway, one more very interesting quote is there where we can understand. Prabhupada explains that how it is only by the mercy of the Lord it will be possible that we all can get over this material desires, especially this lusty desires. We are all knotted, bound in this material world by these lusty desires. So it's only possible to get rid of them by the mercy of the Lord. So Prabhupada says, Krishna is the only means. When one is attracted by Krishna, who is called Madana Mohana. Madana means lusty desires, and Krishna is Madana Mohana. So he is so attractive that one forgets lusty desires. If we become attracted to Krishna, then we will forget lusty desires. Otherwise, we cannot forget lusty desires. Therefore, his name is Madana Mohana. So if you don't contact Madana Mohana, then you will be suffering Madana Dahana. So if we don't contact Madana Mohana, then we will be burnt by Madana. Then it will be Madana Dahana. Dahana means Dahyamananam, always suffering the blazing fire of lusty desires. See? So we'll be always suffering the blazing fire of Dahana means it's a fire. Lusty desires are like fire. They will be always burning. Then in last class we were saying Dushpurena, always burning more and more. You see. So, especially when Prabhupada says, in this age, it is possible to be in contact with the Madana Mohana. It's always 24-hour we can be in contact with the Supreme Lord by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Prabhupada gives the example of Haridas Thakur, that how just by chanting the holy name of the Lord, he was able to completely neglect the lust personified there. Maya Devi personified came to test him, but just by the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord, it was possible. But of course we are not on the level of Haridas Thakur, but we can try to increase our taste for chanting more and more. So then Hridayananda Maharaj asked a question. We don't know how we can increase our desire for chanting. So then Prabhupada said, by performing Sankirtana. Just like if a man drinks, and if he drinks and drinks and drinks, he becomes a drunkard. The same example. Drink more and more and you become a drunkard. Similarly, chant more and more and you become perfect chanter. So this is a way of increasing our desire to chant more and more. Then when we chant more and more, our desire to chant more and more will increase. So we'll stop with this. There's more to read, but I think it's already time. We'll see in some other class. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.